mighty have fallen, or were they mighty to begin with? Vimeo used to be the place for professional filmmakers to show their work at a higher quality bitrate than YouTube allows. It was also a place for indie filmmakers of all kinds to display content that either didn't fit on YouTube or wouldn't be seen on YouTube's platform, and that's something about YouTube we'll talk about here in a second. But first, where is this doom and gloom coming from about Vimeo? Well, in the Vimeo 2022 annual shareholder letter, they said, "We are a B2B solution, not the indie version of YouTube." This mindset shift from Vimeo is probably coming after the failure of going public as a company during the pandemic and not reaching the goals they had set for themselves. Vimeo is kind of in a crisis mode at this point, talking about finding their identity in the letter, saying, "The majority of our potential customers don't yet know the answer to this question, largely because Vimeo has evolved so materially over the last few years. Today, we are a technology platform, not a viewing destination." And that mindset is carried over into action from the company towards some of its top creators and users of the platform, and even some of its smaller users. Louise van Barrel, a digital artist from the Netherlands, has been using Vimeo for 13 years. She has uploaded 117 subscriber-only videos that generally only get around 150 views. And she typically has to pay around $200 a year to use Vimeo, which she admits she feels like is a lot, but because of the quality that the platform provides, she felt that it was a price worth paying. But on March 11th, Vimeo sent her a notice that her bandwidth was one of the top 1% of users on Vimeo, and that if she wanted to continue to host her videos there, she would have to agree to pay for a custom plan that costs around $3,500 a year. She was given a week to upgrade or leave Vimeo. And this has affected creators on Patreon as well, as their Vimeo hosted videos have disappeared, as Vimeo has essentially held their entire Patreon catalog hostage unless they have agreed to pay the new custom plan based on their usage, like with Luis. There are a lot more stories and things we could go over, but I think you get the point here. Vimeo is no longer a platform for indie filmmakers, creators, artists, unless you're a big corporate company, which seems to be their main target at this point. I mean, can you blame Vimeo for this switch in identity as a company? Not really, as they've generally become irrelevant over the years and don't have close to the same pull as YouTube, even though they were not trying to be YouTube in the first place. And really, some of this is just due to the size of the two companies. YouTube made $28.8 billion in revenue last year, where Vimeo made around $106 million, and that's barely covered their costs. I mean, YouTube has beaten out Netflix in revenue in certain quarters. Not only that, but they have the full weight of Google behind them as well. So you can see why Vimeo just can't keep up with the bandwidth needs of its older users. It just doesn't work financially, and they're shifting. And it's an unfortunate situation, especially for video professionals who have relied on Vimeo for years as the place to put their content and art in the best quality possible. It's also a great place to be found by other professionals in the industry and not get lost in the crowd on YouTube. So as Vimeo starts to transition slowly to work with big dollar corporate companies, where will their old users go now? YouTube? To a point, maybe. I think this is a logical place for most creators to go. YouTube's philosophy has always been quantity over quality when it comes to actual bitrate and how their analytics work. To get noticed on YouTube, you have to constantly make content or you get buried, which means a lot of great indie documentaries that thrived on Vimeo might have a hard time even being recommended on the YouTube platform, as well as those trying to actually see quality difference instead of just seeing compression artifacting in YouTube's videos. Maybe YouTube will eventually develop something to be able to upload at higher bit rates and also work to create spaces for indie documentaries and films, but for the moment, longtime Vimeo users are getting kicked out and left in the cold. And no matter your opinion on using Vimeo or YouTube, it's sad to see as a great space for unknown artists to display their work is gone, and Vimeo no longer wants them. But do you know who does want you, or I guess kind of if maybe you meet their requirements or maybe not even then? Netflix. Check out the newest Council of Netflix approved box cinema camera from Lumix right here. It'll cheer you right up.